Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreadline Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. I never used to believe in bad luck numbers. I didn't care that some buildings skipped the 13th floor or that airplanes avoided row 13. Numbers were numbers, until last fall. It started with a business trip to a hotel in northern Michigan. I was supposed to attend a conference for work, 3 days of lectures and schmoozing, and then back home to normal life. It was standard stuff. But the hotel, that's where it all started. I booked late, so the main hotel was full. I ended up at a smaller boutique place a few blocks from the lake called the Crescent Inn. It looked nice online, old Victorian exterior, recently renovated. The kind of place with too many pillows on the bed and a wine list longer than the dinner menu. Check-in was smooth. The clerk, young guy, pale, with a name tag that read Elliot, barely looked up from his screen as he slid the key card across the desk. "Third floor," he said, "room 301. I thanked him and turned to leave, but he added quietly, "If the elevator shudders, don't worry, it's old." The elevator did shudder, violently, between the second and third floors, like something had caught in the gears. But it leveled out and the doors creaked open to a dimly lit hallway. Now, here's the thing. Room 301 was supposed to be the first door on the right, but there was no room 301. I walked the length of the hallway. There was 302, 303, and so on, but no 301. I thought maybe I missed it, so I went back. Nothing. Just a blank stretch of wallpaper between the elevator and 302. Confused, I went back downstairs. "There's no room 301, I said to Elliot. He didn't react, just stared. I almost thought he didn't hear me, so I repeated, "You gave me 301, but it's not there." He finally blinked. "Try the key card." "What?" "Just try the key card," he said, and turned away. I should have left right then. I should have demanded a refund or gone to a Motel 6 or anywhere else. But I didn't. I took the elevator back up, and I slid the card across the blank wall where room 301 should have been. The door appeared, just like that, out of nowhere. A faint outline formed, then a brass number plate flickered into view. The key card clicked, and the door opened. The room was wrong. I don't mean messy or outdated. It was pristine, neat, dustless, but the air felt heavy, pressurized, like walking into a sealed vault. The lights were on, soft amber from antique fixtures, and everything inside looked frozen in time. The bed was made, the curtains drawn shut. A vase of dead flowers sat on the nightstand, brittle and blackened like they'd been there for decades. I stepped in and the door closed on its own. No click, just shut. I turned and tried to open it again. Locked. Okay, I told myself. Just a weird old room, maybe themed or something. Some boutique hotels like to go over the top. I dropped my bag on the bed and took a look around. No TV, no minibar, no phone, no outlets. There was a framed picture on the wall above the dresser. A photo, black and white, of a young man standing in the hallway. This hallway, same wallpaper, same light fixtures, but the man had no face, blurred out like someone had smeared the image with their thumb. Something in me tensed. My head started to ache, a deep pressure behind the eyes. I turned away. That's when I saw the mirror, full length, standing across from the bed. But the reflection wasn't right. The room in the mirror wasn't the room I was standing in. In the reflection, the bed was unmade, the curtains open to a night sky, and someone, me, was lying in the bed, asleep. I stepped closer. So did the reflection. Only it wasn't copying me, not exactly. Its eyes were open, watching, smiling. I stumbled back, heart racing. The lights flickered. A noise came from the bathroom. A low humming, not mechanical, not human. I moved slowly toward the door and pushed it open. The tub was full of black water and something just beneath the surface. I didn't stay. I grabbed my bag, went to the door, and yanked. Still locked. I pounded on it, yelled. Nothing. The lights buzzed again. I heard the mirror creak behind me, then a voice right in my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. The voice was close, too close, not muffled through walls or from another room. It was inside, in the space between me and the door, between the pulse in my neck and the sound in my skull. I spun around. Nothing, no one, just that God-forsaken mirror and my reflection, or what was left of it. The version of me in the mirror was standing completely still, but everything around him had changed. The wallpaper had peeled back into dripping rot. The carpet had turned to wet, black moss. The other me, the mirror me, was now smiling wider, almost grotesquely so, as if his skin was stretching too far over his face. He raised one hand and waved. I stumbled back until my spine hit the door. I had to get out. I rammed the keycard into the lock again and again until it snapped. No beep, no green light, nothing. The air felt thicker now, like the room was breathing. Faint whispers curled around the ceiling like cigarette smoke. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt their meaning. Stay, stay, stay. I turned to the nightstand, thinking maybe I could find something to pry the door open, or at least break the mirror. The drawer stuck at first, then groaned open. Inside was a key, not to the room. A skeleton key, old and rusted, the kind you'd see in antique shops or dreams. Attached to it was a tag, faded and water-stained, with a single word, basement. There was no mention of a basement on the hotel map near the elevator, but maybe, just maybe, that was the way out. I needed to find the basement. The door finally opened on its own, like it had been listening and chose to obey only when I accepted the key. The hallway outside wasn't the same. It was darker now, narrower, like the walls had shifted closer together, squeezing out space. The lights flickered in slow rhythmic pulses, like a heartbeat. And then I noticed something even stranger. There were no doors anymore. Where room 302, 303, and the others had been, there were just smooth, uninterrupted walls. No room numbers, no knobs, just the illusion of hallway. I pressed the elevator button. It lit up red. When the doors opened, it wasn't the elevator I'd ridden before. This one was lined with tarnished brass, its floor made of warped wood. A single exposed light bulb hung from a cord in the center, swinging slightly. I stepped in. There were no buttons, just a crank handle mounted where the panel should have been, and etched into the metal above it, a word, basement. I turned the crank. The light flickered once, then stayed on, and the elevator began to descend. Only, not down, not really. The sensation was strange, not like movement, but falling through layers. The walls around me began to ripple. I saw flashes, not of floors, but of memories. A child crying behind a locked door. A man standing alone in a lake at night, up to his waist, smiling as though he was waiting for someone to drag him under. A woman, face obscured, whispering something into a mirror. The elevator jerked to a stop. The doors opened. It wasn't a basement. Not really. It was more like a buried floor, never meant to be found. The air was cold, not just in temperature, but in intent. like it resented being disturbed. The hallway was made of stone, wet, alive with mildew and something crawling beneath the surface. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. Shapes formed in the corner of my eyes, human outlines, twitching, almost breathing. I moved forward. At the end of the hall was a door, slightly ajar. The same brass number as before, 301. Inside was the same room, same bed, same vase of dead flowers. But the mirror was shattered, glass shards scattered like teeth across the floor, and in the center of the room was the man from the photo. No face, just skin, stretched where features should have been. He was standing perfectly still, as if posed for a picture, and in his hand, he held a second key. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. He stepped forward, extended the key and placed it in my hand, and then he whispered, "Trade places. Part 6, trade places." The faceless man stood inches from me, the key trembling in my hand. He didn't move, didn't blink. He couldn't. His skin was stretched like damp paper, blank where his features should be. No eyes, no mouth, just smoothness, except for a shallow indentation where a mouth might have been, barely pulsing with each whispered breath. "Trade places," he repeated, but this time the voice came from inside my own head. I backed away, but my feet wouldn't respond. It felt like I was glued to the floor. Every nerve screamed to move, but my body had surrendered. The mirror behind him, shattered though it was, began pulling light inward, warping the edges of the room. The fragments on the floor vibrated, rearranged themselves. Each shard now showed a different version of me. One lying in the tub, motionless. One trapped behind the mirror glass, pounding silently. One standing over Elliot's body, covered in blood. I didn't know what was real anymore. Then the mirror began to reform. Shards floating up, reassembling with impossible speed. Only it wasn't reflecting the room now. It showed room 301 as it had been years ago. Clean, warm, alive. The faceless man stepped into it and vanished. In his place was me. Not my reflection, but me, standing inside the mirror, wearing the same clothes, moving independently. He smiled. I didn't. He turned, lay down on the bed, and closed his eyes. And in that moment, I felt my body lurch. The world flipped. I was weightless for half a second, and then it all slammed into place, hard. I was on the other side. I was in the mirror, looking out, watching as he, the other me, stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out of room 301. The door closed gently behind him, and then darkness. I don't know how long I was there. Time doesn't move right inside the mirror. There's no hunger, no sleep, just endless awareness. I watched the room from every angle at once, as if my consciousness had been smeared across the walls. I felt the dust collect, the air thicken. I heard the floorboards groan under no weight at all, and I waited, for months, years. Then, one day, light. The door opened. Another guest stepped inside, confused, blinking at the unfamiliar room. He looked down at his key card. Room 301. The mirror shimmered, and I knew what I had to do. Epilogue. Hotel feedback. A few weeks later, someone left a review for the Crescent Inn on a travel site. Strange place. My room was nice, but I swear it didn't exist at first. 301 just appeared after I used the key. Kind of cool, kind of creepy. I had the weirdest dreams too. Felt like someone was watching me from the mirror. Would stay again. Underneath it, the hotel manager replied, "Thank you for staying with us. We hope to welcome you back soon. Room 301 always remembers its guests." You ever have that feeling that something's wrong before you even open your eyes? I woke up that morning with the sound of silence ringing in my ears. Not the usual hush that comes with early hours, but a hollow, pressing kind of silence, like the whole world had hit pause. It was my first day off in nearly 2 months, and I'd planned to spend it at the lake cabin I'd inherited from my uncle. It was tucked away deep in the Adirondacks, far from anything. No phone service, no internet, just thick woods and still water. Peace and quiet, I'd thought, exactly what I needed. But the second I opened my eyes, something about the quiet felt wrong, not peaceful, not natural. I brushed it off, got up, stretched, made some coffee. Just nerves, maybe. I hadn't been back here since I was a kid. As I stood on the back porch looking out over the lake, that feeling settled deeper. The water was flat, glassy and still, but it didn't reflect the sky right. The clouds moved above, but the lake didn't ripple, didn't shimmer. It just sat there, black, waiting. There were no birds either. That was the first thing I couldn't explain. Not a single chirp, not a rustle in the trees, just the whisper of wind that didn't seem to touch anything. I told myself it was fine, that I was just adjusting to being so far from the city. I pulled out the old rowboat from under the deck, shoved it into the water, and rowed out like I had 100 times when I was little. About 50 yards from shore, I stopped, let the boat drift. The air smelled heavy, damp, but not like fresh rain, more like earth, like rot. Then I heard it. It was faint but distinct, like someone knocking deep below the surface. A dull thud, thud, thud. At first I thought it was a tree branch bumping against the hull, but the sound was coming from beneath, from inside the lake. I leaned over the edge, squinting into the dark water. Nothing. No fish, no plants, just a slow, pulsing blackness. The knocking stopped. I waited. Then something tapped the bottom of the boat. Just once. Hard. Like a warning. I nearly fell out of the damn thing trying to paddle back to shore. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. When I hit the dock, I didn't tie off the boat. I just ran up to the cabin and slammed the door behind me. Inside it felt colder than before. The air had that stale, mildewy taste I remembered from the basement when I was a kid. But there was no reason it should have smelled like that up here. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. Just tired, anxious, maybe even homesick in some weird way. So I grabbed a book and settled into the old recliner by the fire. But then the photos caught my eye. My uncle had lined the walls with black and white photos. Old ones, mostly of the cabin, the woods, the lake. Some of them had been there since I was a kid. But now, I swear some of them looked different. There was one of the lake, taken from the shore, same view I had this morning. But in the photo, there was a shape in the water, a long black shape, just below the surface. And when I leaned closer, it wasn't a shadow. It looked like a hand, just barely reaching out. I tried to laugh it off. Old photos always have weird shadows, right? Maybe water damage. But as I scanned the others, a chill started crawling down my spine. Every single picture of the lake had something in the water. A hand, a face. Once, what looked like someone standing knee-deep near the center, their eyes pale and wide, staring straight at the camera. I yanked that one off the wall and flipped it over. On the back, in faded pen, my uncle had written, "Don't let it hear your name." That's when I remembered something else. When I was about 8 years old, I'd spent a whole summer here with my uncle. I used to wander down to the dock and throw rocks, try to skip them. One day, he came sprinting down from the cabin, eyes wild, and yanked me back so fast I nearly fell. I thought he was mad, but he knelt in front of me, grabbed me by the shoulders, and said, "Don't ever speak to it. Don't ever tell it who you are. I hadn't remembered that until now. My mind had buried it. But in that moment, I could still see the terror in his eyes, the way he kept looking at the lake like it was alive. I didn't sleep that night, and that was only the beginning. The night fell fast. It was one of those sudden transitions where the light seems to drop out of the sky like someone flipping a switch. No twilight, just gone. I lit a fire in the old stone fireplace, but the warmth didn't touch the rest of the room. Shadows clung to the corners like cobwebs. Every time I glanced at the window, I expected to see a face pressed against the glass. Not because I'd heard anything, just because the air felt expectant, like something was waiting. I kept checking the lake from the window, half expecting to see ripples, movement, anything. But the water just sat there, darker than before, like it was absorbing the night instead of reflecting it. Then, around 2:30 a.m., the knocking returned. Faint at first. I thought maybe it was the wind or an old pipe in the walls, but it got louder, more distinct. 3 knocks, thud, 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 from beneath the cabin floor. I froze. The cabin sat on a raised foundation, about 2 feet off the ground. There was no basement, nothing but dirt and dead leaves under there. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and stepped outside to check. The night air hit me like a wet cloth, heavy and close. I crouched near the edge of the porch and aimed the beam under the cabin. Nothing, just dry ground, scattered leaves, and some spiders. But then the knocking came again. This time from inside the cabin. I spun around. 3 knocks. From inside the wall, just beside the fireplace. I backed up slowly. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But leave where? The truck was parked half a mile up the hill, and the trail was pitch black. There were no neighbors, no lights, no cell service. I slept on the couch that night. Well, tried to. I kept the fire going, the flashlight clutched in my hand like a weapon. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke up just before dawn to silence again. No knocks, no wind, no birds. But there was something new, a puddle, right in the center of the room, beneath the hanging photo of the lake. I approached slowly. The water was dark, almost oily, and in the reflection I saw something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't me, it was my uncle, or someone who looked like him, standing behind me, eyes black as pitch, his mouth moving silently. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back, the puddle was gone, just dry floorboards. I spent the rest of the day outside, fixing up the old dock, doing anything to stay busy. But I couldn't shake the image of that reflection. That night, I made a decision. I would go through my uncle's things. Maybe there was something, an explanation, a diary, letters, something to make sense of this. I started in the attic. Dusty boxes, old clothes, fishing gear, and one metal tin locked with a rusted latch. I broke it open with a hammer. Inside were 3 items, a tape recorder, a small leather-bound notebook, a black stone, smooth and cold. I played the tape first. The voice was my uncle's, but strained, like he'd been crying. If you're hearing this, it means you stayed overnight. It heard you. It knows you're here. There's not much time. Don't speak your name. Don't stand near the water after dark. And above all, don't answer the knocking. The tape ended with static. I opened the notebook. Most of the pages were ramblings, paranoia, repetitions of the same phrases. It comes from below. The lake was never a lake. Water remembers. It wants a name. One entry, dated 3 months before his death, stood out. I saw her again. The girl, same dress, same blank face. She walks on the water like it's solid ground. She knows I can hear her. She smiled this time. God help me, she smiled. I closed the notebook. My hands were shaking. Later that night, I sat by the window, watching the lake. I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep until a sound woke me. Knocking. but this time, not from inside. It was coming from the dock. I rushed to the porch and turned on the flashlight. The beam landed on something standing at the end of the dock. A figure, motionless, drenched, head tilted, watching me. And then, in a voice that sounded like it came from underwater, it said, "I know you." I slammed the door shut and locked it, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the wind rising outside. The voice, that chilling liquid voice, echoed in my mind. "I know you." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat in a chair facing the lake, flashlight in one hand, the black stone from my uncle's box in the other. It felt warm now, like it had absorbed my fear. At first light, I made a decision. I was done. I packed a bag, grabbed the notebook and recorder, and was about to leave when I noticed something wrong with the front door. It wouldn't open. The knob turned, but the door wouldn't budge. I pushed. I kicked. Nothing. I tried the back door. Same thing. It was like the wood had fused to the frame. Panic started rising again. I ran to the window and tried to open it. It wouldn't move. But as I pressed against it, I saw something out on the lake, ripples from the center moving outward, like something had broken the surface. But I didn't see anything there until I looked longer. There was a shape just beneath the surface, huge, shifting, almost like a structure, like ruins. I stepped back from the window and caught sight of the painting again, the one of the lake. Only now it looked different. The surface of the water in the image was broken, disturbed, and in the corner, almost hidden in the trees, was a small figure in white. It hadn't been there before. I ripped the painting off the wall and found a note taped behind the frame. "There's a reason they drained the lake in '54, but they didn't get it all. It comes back. Every time someone listens." It clicked. The tape. I replayed it, this time letting it play through the static. "Don't answer the knocking. If you do, it knows your voice. It needs your voice. That's how it climbs back out." I had spoken. I had called out at the dock. I had answered. I backed away from the player, stumbling over the edge of the rug, and hit something hollow. The floor. I rolled the rug back. Beneath it, a hidden door. A cellar, but there wasn't supposed to be a cellar. The latch creaked as I pulled it open. Stairs led down into blackness. But I had to know. Maybe there was a way out. Maybe there were answers. The air grew colder with every step. The flashlight flickered as I reached the bottom. The walls were stone, wet, covered in carvings, symbols, repeated over and over. A circle with 3 vertical lines, an eye with no pupil, a figure with arms raised and no face. The space opened into a small chamber, and in the center was a stone basin filled with dark water. The black stone in my hand vibrated, and then I heard the voice again. "I remember you." But it wasn't coming from behind me. It was coming from inside me. The water in the basin began to boil, shapes twisted within it, faces, screaming mouths, and then one face rose above the surface, mine, but not me, paler, eyes hollow. It smiled and whispered, "Let me in." Everything in me screamed to run, but my body wouldn't move. My reflection's hand reached out of the basin, stretching across the space between us. I threw the stone into the water. The reaction was instant. A blast of sound, like every knock, whisper, and scream I'd heard compressed into a single note, shook the walls. The face shrieked, shattering into black mist. The basin cracked. Water spilled across the stone floor, rushing to my feet, and then silence. I bolted up the stairs. The door opened this time, so did the windows. The sun had risen fully. The air smelled clean, like rain. I didn't wait. I left the cabin and didn't stop walking until I reached the truck. I didn't look back, not once. I made it home. A week passed, then 2. I didn't tell anyone. How could I? Who would believe me? But a few nights ago, I heard it again, 3 knocks from beneath the bed, and last night I dreamed of the lake again. Only this time, the water was gone, just mud, and something breathing beneath it. So if you've come this far, if you're listening, don't answer, don't speak your name, and if you hear knocking from below, run. I was driving upstate, chasing solitude. City life had been clawing at my sanity for months. The noise, the deadlines, the endless stream of people. I needed quiet. I needed space to think. When I found a listing for a secluded rental cabin nestled near a forgotten lake in Vermont, it felt like the kind of sign people romanticize in movies. No neighbors, no cell service, just trees, water, and time. The owner was an older man named Mr. Corwin. Our phone call was brief. "You want privacy?" he'd said. "This place will give it to you." He didn't lie. The drive took 6 hours, with the last 30 minutes being nothing but winding gravel paths and creeping wilderness. I passed a wooden sign with half the letters worn away, Akeview House, and knew I was close. Eventually, the trees gave way to a clearing, and there it was, the house. 3 stories of weather-beaten wood and rotting porch railings, windows like black eyes. It looked more like a forgotten orphanage than a cabin. Still, I told myself it had character. I convinced myself I could work with it. I should have turned around. Part 2. The locked room. The key was under the mat, just like Corwin said. There was no welcome note, no Wi-Fi password or instructions for the fireplace, just silence, thick and unmoving. Inside, the air smelled like old cedar and older secrets. The first 2 floors were sparse but livable. Dusty furniture, cold fireplace, a kitchen that looked untouched for decades. But it was the 3rd floor that caught my attention. A narrow staircase led up to a single, locked door. Naturally, I tried it. Naturally, it didn't open. But something about it unnerved me. I told myself to ignore it, to focus on my writing, to make coffee and appreciate the quiet. But every time I passed that staircase, I felt it. Something waiting on the other side. On the 3rd night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps above me. Heavy, deliberate, pacing. I didn't sleep after that. Part 3. The recordings. The next morning, I opened the old drawer in the living room and found a camcorder. No label, just dust and fading plastic. Curiosity won. The battery was dead, but I found a charger and let it sit overnight. By morning, it blinked to life. There were 3 recordings on the device. The first was just static. The second showed the living room, this living room, but everything was newer, brighter. A man sat on the couch, smiling. He looked tired. In love, maybe. Someone behind the camera said, "Say hi to your future self." He waved. The screen went black. The 3rd video was taken at night. The man, same one, stood at the base of the stairs, looking up toward the 3rd floor. He whispered, "I didn't open it. It opened itself." Then came the footsteps. Louder this time, closer. The man turned the camera toward the locked door just as it creaked open. Not fast, not sudden, slow, deliberate. The feed cut out. I sat there, frozen, the camcorder buzzing in my hands. Then I heard it, footsteps from upstairs. Part 4. A voice in the walls. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard things, quiet things, scratching, murmuring, faint echoes that didn't belong in any house. The worst part, it was coming from inside the walls, not from the hallway, not from the room next door, from inside the damn walls. I pressed my ear to the wall near the base of the 3rd floor stairwell and held my breath. There it was, just behind the surface. A voice, whispering like it had its mouth an inch from my ear. Too soft to understand, too close to ignore. And then, it stopped. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, eyes locked on the wall like it might break open. The camcorder still sat on the couch, but the screen had turned on by itself. The same footage, again and again. The man looking up the stairs, the door creaking open. But something changed. Each time the video looped, the man looked a little more like me. I shut it off. I grabbed my keys and bolted for the door. It wouldn't open. I twisted the knob, pounded on it, screamed. Then, from upstairs, a voice, not muffled this time, clear. "Come see. It's your turn." I turned toward the stairs. The third-floor door was wide open. Part 5. The house remembers. I don't know what pulled me up those stairs. Curiosity, fear, or maybe whatever waited behind that door was done waiting. The hallway was pitch black, not dark, lightless. My phone flashlight flickered and died as I crossed the threshold. And yet I kept walking. The floor groaned under my feet like it was alive. Every step forward was answered with a creak from behind me. I wasn't alone. I reached the end of the hallway. The door that had been locked since I arrived was now cracked open. A sliver of red light poured out from within. I pushed the door. Inside was a room that shouldn't have fit in the house. It was massive, walls lined with mirrors, each one fogged except for the one directly across from me. That one was clear, and it didn't reflect the room. It showed the living room downstairs, the couch, the fireplace, the camcorder, and me, sitting, watching. Except I wasn't there. I was here. I backed away. The mirror didn't. The me in the mirror stood up, walked toward the screen. My back hit the wall. It was breathing, hot air, behind the wallpaper. I turned and ran, back down the hall, down the stairs. The house moaned, the lights surged, then died. When I reached the front door, it was open, not just unlocked, wide open, like it had never been stuck, like it had been waiting for me to try the third floor. Outside, the forest was silent, but the house behind me was not. It was laughing. I don't remember getting in my car. I don't remember the drive. All I remember is this. When I got home, I checked the camcorder. It was still in my bag, and there were 4 videos. The last one was recorded from the top of the stairs. It showed me opening the door and walking in.